mountains, through the Sahara, we bring on-spot news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economy, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today, only on ATN.
People into the country illegally. That is amazing.
Honorable Speaker,
You human
On the point of order.
Honorable Speaker,
On the point of
they are not picking our calls. They made up their minds.
So no agreement with the EU, but
morning and welcome to Atlantic Blowout right here on Atlantic Television Network. I am Nia Barry Fakai. I hope you had a good night, and today's show is set to be quite insightful. We have a very great pundit in the studio today, and we'll be talking through the National Assembly, the concern about the electoral bill, and also conversations about Nnamdi Kanu's trial and the situation of the courts with the new pleas, new terrorism charges against him. Okay, so that and a lot more we'll have to discuss right here on Atlantic Blowout. Now we'll also have Lagos and Abuja join us this morning, so do not go anywhere. We're set to have a very, very insightful conversations rather, if you will, right here on Atlantic Blowout. Welcome.
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring on-spot news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economy, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today. Only on ATN.
People into the country illegally. That is amazing.
Honorable
You
students,
human
On the point of order.
Honorable students,
On the point of
but they are not picking our calls. They don't have it.
So no agreement with the EU, but
welcome back to Atlantic Blowout. And on today's stories, National Assembly, that is the budget, uncovers 378.9 billion naira duplicated projects, and it calls out the National Assembly on padding. And in politics, we have the electoral bill, constitution amendment, insecurity, top agendas as reps reconvene. And on Nnamdi Kanu's trial, the court adjourns Nnamdi Kanu's trial till Wednesday as the federal government files new terrorism charges. And on my show today, I have my guest, Barrister Sogbeye Eli, in the studio with me. Now, on our first story, a little background on it. The National Assembly has been accused of padding the federal government's budget, amongst other allegations. Budget Nigeria, a civic tech organization, has announced its discovery of 460 duplicated projects valued at 378.9 billion naira in the 2022 Appropriation Act. Now, the group is called on citizens, civil society organizations, the private sector, and the international community to urgently prevail on the National Assembly and the presidency to urgently amend the loopholes in the approved budget. The organization has pointed out that Nigeria should be concerned with the occurrence of inflated projects amounting to billions of naira directly linked to the State House and the presidency. Now, the country director of budget, Gabriel Okoewo, said the loopholes for fraud in the 2022 federal government budget is a crime against the 86 million Nigerians living below poverty line, an injustice to hardworking taxpayers, and an open mockery of our countries lending to Nigeria and the ones also looking to get in business with Nigeria in 2022. Now, on to the second story, the politics and the electoral bill, the constitution amendment, and insecurity should be, or is said to be, top agenda as reps reconvene. Now, members of the House of Representatives bill to resume preliminaries on Tuesday after 27 days of the Christmas and New Year holiday. With their tenure drawing close to the end, the lawmakers had to work on some bills before the holidays, and the most controversial of all being the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. Although there is the likelihood that they may be slowed down by political activities occurring at this time, it is expected that they follow through with outstanding work, especially that of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. And then we recall that President Muhammadu Buhari had notified the lawmakers of his decision to reject the 2021 Electoral Act Amendment Bill, which the National Assembly had in November passed and transmitted to him for assent. A motion has been moved by the minority leader Ndudi Elemulu, that's that of PDP Delta, that the House at the time would consider the bill and remove the controversial direct primaries clause the president raised concerns over, and still pass the bill on the same day. However, on that day, the Speaker of the House, while responding to the point of order moved by the minority leader, said that the lawmakers needed to go back and consult with their constituency, and of course the Senate needed to also be in agreement. On our third story today, we will look at Nnamdi Kanu's trial, as court adjourns Nnamdi Kanu's trial till Wednesday as the federal government files new terrorism charges. Now, the IPOB leader now faces a total of 15 counts of terrorism and treasonable felony, as the federal government has amended the charges against him. It was done 24 hours to the hearing. Nnamdi Kanu, who has been in detention since his alleged abduction from Kenya and repatriation to Nigeria, was represented by his team of lawmakers led by Chief Mike Ozekweme, a senior advocate of Nigeria. His team complained that the federal government failed to promptly serve him the fresh 15 amended charges it brought before the court. Ozuekume said, "My lord, the proposed amendment charges were served on us yesterday, that's Monday, was served on Monday, and as I speak to you, my lord, the defendant who is just brought in has not seen the charges which he's been told to enter into his plea. With due respect, this is not justice, it's ambushing. I know that the Administration of Criminal Justice Act allows the federal government to amend, but this is the 6th amendment they are making, and each time they do it, they serve us a day to the hearing just to frustrate the trial." The Federal High Court sitting in Abuja adjourned further proceedings in the case against Nnamdi Kanu till Wednesday, that is the 19th of January 2022. We're here now. That's the overview of all the stories we are looking at today. And in the studio, like I pointed out, our guest is here. We'll go on to our first story about the National Assembly and budget, uncovering this monies. I was going to ask, is this something that Nigerians should take serious? Because some people will say this is just a discovery by a standalone company on its own, but it talks about several replications and other forms of padding that has happened here. Is it something that Nigerians should take serious? And if we should take it serious, how should we deal generally as Nigerians?
Well, good morning, Nigerians. Thanks for having me. My reaction is entirely different. Different in the sense that we don't seem to learn as a country, as a people. The language of pardon is strange, but it is rather worrisome that we don't seem to have the capacity to distinguish issues. The National Assembly or any other legislative arm of government at the state level or the local government level does not work on its own. They work with the bureaucracy, civil servants. These ones constitute the engine room of government. They are the ones who build the budget. And very often what to see is lazy civil servants. I say that with respect. Just roll out the budget year in, year out. They have a budget office. They just roll it out. They don't go through and say, okay, in year 2021, this item was in the budget. Let's see this rate of implementation. And then see whether it's been rested or it's continuing before bringing to the next budget. They just continue. I know the document looks voluminous, and we have become a country of lazy intellect. People don't read. So that's why you find that most times these items keep being recycled, budget in, budget out. I do not think most times it's a case of fraud, no. If you have known the process, we follow through the process. If you care to follow through the process, the problem most times comes from the civil servants, who are the ones who compile the records, the drafting, and all the paperwork is done. Parliamentarians only come to the floor to speak English. Most times what is done is from the budget office. All right, then when it comes to Parliament, they have the powers appropriate, so they debate on items. So most times they also don't bother to go back. I'm not ruling out entirely the issue of possibility of fraud or corruption is there. But most times the problem begins from the point of collating the budget. Civil servants don't care to see whether an item that was listed in 2020 is carried over in 2021. They don't care to know the state of the project, if it's a physical project. But an expenditure on the recurrent side, they don't care to know. All they know is put it back. And sometimes too, they say they're under pressure. For instance, when President Buhari made it like we must pass the budget before the 31st of December every year to have a fresh fiscal year beginning next year on January 1. It became a question of, okay, the president brings the budget by October. Then I have 2 months to trash the issues and then pass the budget. Most times they will do, I don't know what name to call it, but at the end of the day, the 8 weeks are not done well, and they just rush the budget, and before you know it is passed. It's even worse at the state levels. At the state level, budgets are passed in 24 hours most times. I want to ask, what did they really scrutinize as parliamentarians? But like I said there, the problem is not only with the parliamentarians, the problem also is with the civil servants who put these items together. If they are about to cross-check what happened the previous year, they will know that, okay, this item had been executed, so cannot continue the next year. And then on and on and on. So next to budgets, our advice, and other Nigerians too, should show patriotism to scrutinize these things. If they know that people are watching, then most of the reports, this reports will not be arising again. We'll have a clean budget for time.
Okay. So if they know that other people are watching, I like that, but I was going to come back a little bit, because you've brought some insights that a lot of us as Nigerians have not considered. Some people within the ranks may do these things. The party, based on maybe they've not followed through, as you've said, they've not paid proper attention. But in the midst of that too, if that is something that they know could happen, maybe some other persons within the offices too may just stick something in, because of course they know that nobody would see through. But the question here is, who is supposed to vet and verify? Who's supposed to vet? Because it's a big document.
It's actually a two-way thing, if you ask me. When the lawmakers receive documents for debates on the floor at plenary, it behoves on the committees that involves to scrutinize those items line by line. But most times, like I've said, it's a two-way thing. But basically, to address the problem begins with the civil servants. They are the ones who collect the budget items. If a lawmaker, for instance, representing my constituency, Federal House, National Assembly, say, Degma Bonifera constituency, brings in an item as a constituency project, all right? It is within his rights, even though it's not in the executive, but now they have what they call constituency projects. So let's use constituency project, for instance. If budget 2020 captures the building of a school, or a road, or a hospital as a capital project, and then they see the same item in 2021, the common sense will say, let's go back and check. Has that job been completed? If not, what degree of completion do we have? So what is left to go? So if you find that budget item recycled again, if you have done due diligence, you know, okay, we have done 60% on the budget in 2020. So in 2021, the item listed there will not have the same value as it was in 2020, because some kind of money has been appropriated from that 2020 budget, and completion is at 60% level. So what should come in 2021, even though the same item is repeated, word for word, you'll find that it's going to be for completion, not for construction. And then the value attached to it will also drop. All right? So due diligence on the part of the civil service that draws the budget, and of course on the side of the legislators who debate the items of passage. Once the two of them collaborate and work, and that's why in every committee in National Assembly or even at the state level, the secretary of the committee is a civil servant, or a clerk, as they call him. It is business to read through some of these items and use a fine-tooth comb to scrutinize the items line for line, and then you'll find some of these things. Where there's an element of fraud or corruption, as budget won't allege, you also know. So for instance, if we're building this building, it's in the budget for a particular year, and then we're, like I mentioned here, we moved up to 60% completion. It's not done yet. That means that we need to send some more money again to continue. Okay? And again, for what I've seen most times in this country, these budget items are only jamborees, for want of the right words. The items are budgeted for are not fully funded most times. So what happens? Most times they have to resurface again in the next budget cycle. If it's okay, we're going to spend 1 million naira on buying a TV camera. All right? And then the 1 million naira was appropriated for and was released by the executive within that budget cycle. And then you don't find TV camera. What is wrong with seeing it again in the next budget cycle? So once we're able to distinguish the issues very well, so we can find where the fault comes from. Which one do we blame? Is it the civil servants that recycled it out of laziness? Or two, is it like some politician in the mold of a legislature wants to pull a fast one? But again, like I said, there, civil society, other professionals, everybody must own this thing. Let's be stakeholders in the project. So we don't just say we have elected people to the National Assembly or State House of Assembly or councillors, and we'll let them do their bids, do their thing. Just like the executive is oversighted and monitored by the parliament. Even parliament, in their own practice, have what they call the town hall meetings, have what they call public hearings. Those are venues for people who are their constituents to come and speak on issues before they are passed as laws. Yes, so when we have passed a budget, in course implementation, people should cry and go and see what has happened. If, for instance, the budget is made public It's a public document. You go through the budget and find out what was appropriate for your own community or own local government in the particular budget year. If the project is not done, and then suddenly you find again in the next year budget, it's okay, no problem. But when it is done and then it's recycled again, then you can raise alarm. So it's a stakeholder thing. People should own up. We don't sit back and say, well, we have elected them. They have 4 years to their lives, so they can live their lives the way they want. If you're accountable to us, so as citizens, we must also wake up. The journey does not begin and end with campaigns and voting and then that's all. No. After voting, you hold the government accountable by monitoring what government does. That way we can put everybody on his toes and then be accountable.
Okay, thank you so much. We are all supposed to come together and hold these people accountable. I like how you pointed it out. We don't vote them in and expect that they live 4 years of their lives without people looking into how they live it. But our guest in the studio has also pointed out, made a salient point that on all levels we need to find a way to meet and collaborate. The civil servants also contribute to what we have here now, but budget is calling out the National Assembly, and they may not know, or they may know, it's alleged, but it's up to us. It's up to us as a people to speak up when it is time. I know that Lagos is set to join us, and Abuja. Good morning, Chinyere.
Good morning, Neka. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Welcome to the Blowout. Okay, so our guest is all yours this morning.
Good morning, Barrister Eli. Good to see you too.
Good morning, happy New Year. Good to see you.
All right, so the issue of budget padding has been. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, the issue of budget padding has been back and forth. Sometimes when we still talk about it, it's like flogging a dead horse, but we still have to talk about it, by the way. Talk to us about some concerns that Nigerians have raised. Just like my colleague said, the process or the issue of budget padding cannot be trusted. This is not, this is one out of 1,000 that we have seen, and the Nigerians are asking if it's something they can trust again. You have raised the issue of carelessness on the part of, people who are supposed to check through to be sure that a project that were executed in the outgoing year is not repeated in the next budget. But give us a legal perspective. Talk to us about if there are judicial proponents or legal underpinnings as regards budgeting in Nigeria.
Well, speaking strictly from the point of view of legal issues or legislation or judicial activism, in this country, as far as I can remember, there's this local classical case of Senator Abraham Adesanya against the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That was in the Second Republic, where Senator Abraham Adesanya sued the federal government under President Shehu Shagari, demanding for a retooling of the Derivation Act of Principle, right, the sharing of federal allocated revenues, so the states. And the Supreme Court, I remember, overruled him on the grounds of locus classicus. On the grounds of had no locus classicus, had no locus standi. I'm sorry, I'm very sorry. He had no locus standi because it was not a personal matter. It was supposed to be one of general public interest. So the question was, how is that their own personal problem? So Senator Abraham Adesanya was overruled. Now, that's one case of a citizen taking up his own national issues to that level. Apart from that case, a few other cases also are there for reference, but we have not been an active nation when it comes to democracy beyond electioneering and voting. The problem here is that citizens go to bed once government is formed. So government is not held accountable. We only are good at complaining when the bills have been spilled. All right? When it was spilled in milk, that's why we complain. Otherwise, a citizen has a right to go to court and demand that a particular law that's been passed by the National Assembly or a state assembly is enforced, because, for God's sake, that's a law now. Once the president or the governor has given assent, it becomes a law. All right? So you can interrogate it in law, in court, if you find that a certain item there is abused or somebody is playing some games with the people. But when you don't do anything, the courts are just there watching. The courts will not jump into the arena of conflict and shop for what to do. So we're acting for citizen activism. If you find budget 2020 and then budget 2021, you compare and contrast, and the items are replicated, and you have done your own due diligence, you find out, look, this item had been, and then you see it again 2022, you can proceed to court, either as an individual or as a group, provided you are from that constituency. You can challenge it, and then the court can now breathe life into the issues. So I think that that's one way to go out of this loop. People should learn to be active. People should learn to own these budgets. They belong to us. The money belongs to Nigerian people. So when an item is listed in the budget, and that year's budget cycle had run out, and then we'll see that item in the next cycle, when we go to court to interrogate issues, the facts will come. People will be brought into the witness box, all right? And then evidence will be led, and then we'll now know and determine how these items go, whether this is a case of fraud, a case of bureaucratic negligence, we just know. But I am also going to support the view that probably we need to take this thing a notch higher. People should be active. And then maybe the argument would be, would that amount to be lobbying the process, like overload the judicial process again? No. We cannot have an end to hold people accountable. The fact that we have the judicial as a third arm of government also means that they have a role to play. All right? Not only the legislature would oversight the executive, even the judiciary has the right to watch over both arms of government where both of them are going out of the constitution, going out of line. So I think that it's also appropriate that for citizens of this country, time has come when we have to sit up, a budget is passed, or any other law is passed by the National Assembly, and then go and look at the issues very well, whether they follow through. If they don't follow through, proceed to court, and then the court will not determine the issues. That will form some kind of compass going forward.
Okay, so Barrister, you have raised a very profound point, which is talking about, citizens' apathy or citizens' insouciance, if you will. Do you think, because there are arguments out there, that the reason citizens are not, going a notch higher, borrowing from your words now, in terms of following up on what their representatives are up to in the House of Assembly and Senate and the rest of them, is because even the judiciary is an accomplice. Let's talk about the anti-graft agencies now, like the ICPC and the EFCC, that is saddled with the responsibility of ensuring that culprits are brought to book. We see that there's not much is done. It seems like their hands are tied. And now you have suggested that one of the major challenges that we have in this country is citizens' apathy in terms of governance and, not just knowing what happens, but following up issues like this. Do you think the judiciary can be trusted? Because I remember in 2016, the then Speaker of the House of Representatives, Yakubu Dogara, said expressly that he can be held accountable or taken to the courts for budget padding because he's only doing what he's supposed to do. He's doing his job, So this is done with so much impunity, if you ask me, So again, the question is, do you think what has, buoyed citizens' apathy is because, or rather, lack of trust for the judiciary?
Well, I'll take it again from another perspective. First, from the argument from the former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Yakubu Dogara, with respect to him, he's very wrong. He's a public servant, and the last time I checked, the office of the Speaker of the House of Representatives is not under Section 308 of the Constitution. In other words, he's not a governor, he's not a deputy governor, he's not a president or vice president, so he can come under scrutiny by the judiciary. Or generally speaking, people can question his work in Parliament. What you may not be able to do is, while the bills are running through the mill, the National Assembly or the State Assembly, because of the theory of separation of powers, you cannot go to court to stop a bill from being passed. That would be interfering with the work of the arm of government called legislature. But when it has been passed, a bad law can be struck down by the courts. It depends on what the litigant brings before the court. That we don't allow laws that are not made for good governance thrive. But having said that, the anti-graft agencies you mentioned are also creations of law. In this case, they're executive creations. They are part of the executive arm of government. Now, the way these things work are simply this. The Supreme Court has ruled severally that where there is no legal evidence, mere suspicion is not enough. So it's one thing to suspect that something has happened to the budget. It's another thing to prove it. Now, the prosecutorial agencies, like the police, will go to work and investigate. If they find no evidence that is incriminating enough, nobody can be sentenced. Most times we expect so much. Our constitution presumes that an accused person is innocent, and the burden of establishing guilt is not on the accused person, it's on he who alleges. So if you think that Mr. Johnson had padded the budget or done something wrong, it's not enough to stay somewhere and say you don't trust the judiciary or you trust the anti-graft agencies. You provide the evidence to furnish the evidence to show and to prove that indeed the allegation is on sound footing. And as I say, people should not be laid back. People should be more proactive. People should show more interest instead of being lethargic. It doesn't end with, I've done my civic duty, I've voted for candidate A, he's not in power. And I sit down and I criticize him. And I say, no, get involved as a citizen. Follow up the processes. If something has gone wrong and you smell a rat, you do due diligence. When you get the facts, facts are facts. When facts are facts, they are incontrovertible. Judgment must come. I've not seen a judge who will see facts that have satisfied the basic provisions of the Evidence Act. Particularly in the two gammas that we always rattle, the facts are admissible. All right, it has satisfied that criteria, and then the fact is not only admissible, it has been proven. All right, it's relevant rather to the matter before the court. I don't see any judge who will look at that same fact and throw it out of the window. Once that's passed the test of admissibility and relevance, it must ride. Except there's another higher, except the judge himself is bound by a president of a higher court above him. Otherwise, he's bound by a president, he must give a judgment. But sitting down somewhere to presume that even if I go to court, not much can happen, I don't trust the judiciary, for me, it's a lame duck argument.
So, Barrister Ella, before I let you go, some people are not happy with the president, Muhammadu Buhari, because we saw that he was not entirely satisfied with the budget before he gave his assent. And some people have said he was a bit too hasty. You know, he should have, do proper checks and balances. Do you share in that bias?
Again, with respect, I don't. You see, time was when in this country when we have the budget cycle as fluid as the world can be. It's not done that way. There are things that should be taken for granted. A budget is supposed to be for a fiscal year. And if the fiscal year begins by a particular time in a month of a year and then runs for 12 months, it's 1 year, it's 1 year. Now, we have passed what they call the Fiscal Responsibility Act in this same country. The problem is that we have a lot of laws we don't implement. If a law has been passed, a law is a law, it must be obeyed. If the president has a bill before him, passed by the National Assembly, and we have a law that says our budget must begin from January 1 of the next year, why would the president be saddled with the responsibility of going to do due diligence before he signs? The presumption is that, and we must give him the benefit of the doubt, the presumption is there that, look, somebody had done his work well. The president does not have the responsibility to do appropriation jobs. Appropriation is the work of the National Assembly. So, again, applying the theory of separation of powers, it is within common sense to deem the president had exercised his own discretion fairly. Imagine that the National Assembly had done their own work well, and that when the thing comes before his table, it's not his job to go and be to pick his pen and go through that whole budget line by line on all items until he's satisfied before he assents to it. That would be too cumbersome, and that will hold down government for the next maybe 6 months. The budget is not passed, and then citizens will complain because the items are not carried over to the next year, and then if you don't have the budget approval, you cannot spend certain items. And most times when money is not spent and then there's no activity in government, again, you're going to lead to all these issues about inflation and all those economic consequences that are not palatable will follow. So to keep the wheel rolling, that's things that must happen. We have mentioned people who are involved in the process. The budget is not a one-day event. If those people do their work very well before they bring to the president to present the National Assembly, in fact, assuming that the budget office has done these things and then there are errors from the civil service, the president lays the budget on the table of the National Assembly. It behoves on the National Assembly to do a diligent work, do a diligent job by identifying the items line by line. They have the time. The president doesn't have the time. So at the time the budget returns to the president of the National Assembly, it is deemed to have gone through enough scrutiny. So the president just puts his pen on it. That's how it works. All right? But asking the president who sent the budget to the National Assembly to now look at it again, line by line, before he endorses it, might be asking for too much. However, in course of the making of the budget, if the media, civil society, and other people spot some of these items and blow the whistle, the president has a right now to say, okay, this item is my knowledge. It's not supposed to be there until you take it out, not endorse. I will not assent to the budget. That can happen. But if nobody says a thing, the president will assume that what is for him, and rightly so, he will assume, and rightly so, that what's for him is a clean budget, and he will assent. And then life goes on.
Thank you so much, Barrister Eli, for coming on the program. It's always an enriching experience with you and your analysis. Thank you so much. It's back to you, Fakai, in Port Harcourt.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Nyere, for that. That's our first story. On to our next story. Still on the National Assembly and the bills to be passed. We're going to talk about the Electoral Bill Constitution Amendment, the concern about insecurity and why it should be top of the reps agenda as they reconvene. We're going on a quick break right now. Do not go anywhere. You're still on Atlantic Blowout right here on Atlantic Television Network. Members of the House of Representatives will bill to resume plenary on Tuesday after their 27 days holiday. Now, with their tenure drawing close to an end, the lawmakers had worked on some bills before the holidays. And the most controversial of all has been the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. Now, there is likelihood that activities would be slowed down as is speculated, especially because of political activities going through this period. But we all expect that the needful needs to be done for outstanding work that they have, which is the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. And there are other concerns on the bill that the National Assembly needs to look into. We have a lawyer in the studio with us today, just in case you just checked in. Welcome to Atlantic Blowout. We have Barrister Sogbei Eli in the studio with us today, and we will talk about this amendment of the bill. So, first of all, about this bill and the amendment. It's been pointed out that there is the clause that the president is uncomfortable with, and he has asked that some of these things be reviewed. But what, in your own professional opinion, what do you think is the main stall for this bill to be signed?
Well, the president identified the items he's not comfortable with, and it's within his rights. So that will be for him. The president said issues of logistics, security, and of course the transgression of the democratic ethos. If you look at the idea of democracy itself, it is a question of freedom of choice. That's a fundamental principle of any democracy anywhere in the world. Whether it's parliamentary or it is presidential or whatever you call it, from our times in Greece, is allowing the people have a choice exercise. It's the freedom of expression, freedom of movement, all those freedoms that the man is not fettered anyhow. So bring it down to this Electoral Act Amendment Bill. National Assembly goofed by attempting to force everybody into one hole. For instance, all the political parties are not equal weights with the PDP and the APC, for instance. So when they say every party must run its own affairs in a particular manner, in terms of, for instance, filling candidates for an election, you don't do that. Some parties don't have the numbers, don't have the money. And the Constitution was given the right to associate. Freedom of association is enshrined in the Constitution. So everybody must not be in those two big parties. So someone can start from a small party. I don't even agree with the fact that the party must have presence in all the 36 of the Federation of Abuja. I don't agree. But you may not be able to afford. And those are the things that engender corruption. So politicians look for money by all means to meet those conditions, to qualify for registration by INEC. It's wrong. A party can have strength, for instance, in River State. And the only office they can vie for are offices available in River State. Governor, House of Assembly, and that's all. That should be the strength of that party. Allow them there at that level. They must not go to the national level. But in this country, we make things a bit too cumbersome. So, back to the argument. You cannot say everybody must have direct primaries. Direct primaries simply means that every member of the party on the register will come to participate, elect an aspirant as candidate. That's too cumbersome. So we are going to vote for, let's say, the President of Nigeria as candidates. All right, candidate for office of President of Nigeria. Then we are voting simultaneously everywhere in 36 states and Abuja. 704 local government councils are voting at the same time. In River State alone, we'll have 4,400 and something polling units on INEC roll. So we're going to have elections simultaneously. Now, why are the staff from INEC to monitor the process? Don't forget, the Electoral Act says INEC must monitor the process. That's why the political parties will give INEC notice, at least 20 days notice for that premise to happen. So why are the INEC staff that be deployed across all that whole area simultaneously and there will not be fraud? Where are they? If we went up by electronic transmission of results, let's be pragmatic. This studio, as I sit here, I'm very sure the source of power is not public power source. I'm sure it's a private generator. So, how many local governments can boast of power supply to say we can transmit election results electronically? How? How many? Even if they say let's do by text messages, the areas where there will be no network. So what happens to those areas? So let's grow the infrastructure that will support these things before we push them. The president has a right to say, take this item out, take that item out. But particularly, I'm happy about the fact that you don't fetter democracy. When you say everybody must take one route, then that means you have tied people's hands. That's not more democracy. That's dictatorship. Everybody cannot have direct primaries as means to elect candidates to present to the general elections. It's not done. Those who can do direct primaries can do that. Those who want to do indirect by electing delegates who also go and now elect the candidates like they do even in the US system, some are called super delegates. It's doable. It's on. That's an advanced democracy over 200 years. They still do it. Those who want to do consensus, it's again within their rights. Provided it is an expression of the will of the people, however expressed, guided by law, it's okay by me. But you don't say everybody must have, even after all, even the one they call indirect primaries, it begins with direct primaries. At the world level, every member of the party participates. But again, the question is this: do we have a clean membership register of the political parties? Parties are like churches or religious centers. The doors are not shut to anybody. People come in, people go. So let's say yesterday some people defected from APC to PDP. All right? You have not cleaned the register. Then let's say today election is going to hold. And you say everybody on that register can participate. When the man has made public his intention has moved, or somebody moved from PDP to APC, or maybe from another smaller party, and the register has not been cleaned, has not been updated, and then the election is going to hold. How do you guarantee that they have a clean register when people are moving back and forth from political parties? So again, you cannot rely on the fact that one would say people should do indirect primaries. That means that we are shutting out some people. No. The indirect primary is a function of everybody at that local level, at the world level, electing somebody, or electing some people to go and present them as delegates, who in turn will now elect the candidate. Again, this is cost. 2, it is smaller logistics to handle, and it makes more sense. And it's not open to abuse. If you're going to elect the president of this country, for instance, you cannot say everybody should move it to Abuja Ego Square. APC has over 41 million people in rule right now as registered members after the last revalidation that they did. So you're going to move 41 million people to Abuja. The city will collapse. What about accidents on the way? All right? So it's not possible. So if you say, okay, don't come to Abuja, stay in your different locations to do your direct primaries, it will be something of abuse. People will announce all sorts of figures. We saw when some people were doing primaries recently, and they were counting people on the line. They count 1, 2, the next year 7, next year 13, next year 18, then 200. It's a joke. So let's progress with less haste as a democracy. We have done over 20 years now. I'm sure that if we continue at this pace, uninterrupted by military, all right, in the next 25, 30 years, we'll have a more healthier democratic platform before us. As long as we keep progressing, and then we'll make amendments to the electoral law that shows that, look, we are taking out items that are like clogs in the wheel, bit by bit. Even American Constitution up to now is still subject to amendments. So you can't have a perfect law overnight. Let's progress with less haste. As we mature gradually, we take out those items that are not relevant. And then, like I mentioned there, when our infrastructure is built and strong enough, where we can guarantee power supply, for instance, and then everybody can afford a phone, and then data is cheap, because those service providers are not going to charge you based on how much you spend on powering and diesel plants, all right? Everything comes to a level where gradually we can transmit this, then we can get to that point. At the moment, items are not feasible and not meant to be thrown in. So we don't have problems. Because if you go to election decision tribunals, you see what lawyers go through. Now the evidence, the Electoral Act, for instance, provides for how to adduce evidence before tribunals and whose evidence is relevant, admissible. If you are not a voter arrested in a unit, you cannot go to court and testify. If you are a military man posted to that unit to work, because you are not a voter, there's a limit to how much the court will attach value to your evidence as being your call as a witness. Now, and then you have a timeline of about 180 days to exhaust the process. So how many witnesses are you going to field? Put them for examination in chief, and then there's a cross-examination, and then maybe the examination. Where is the time? And before you know it, tribunal have rounded up. Otherwise, the matter becomes caught up by the same laws of our past, pre-election matter, and they're thrown out. How do you build a system that way? So for us to have a system that is almost like seamless, we must be careful what laws we enact and what items bring to our laws. So don't, in attempts to put things right, put yourself on an overdrive and kill the system. If you think that, look, some items cannot be met, cannot be satisfied, some conditions cannot be satisfied, let's drop them. If you have 180 days to prove your case at the tribunal level post-election, then the items that you need to prove should be reduced to a point where the courts can handle, you too as a litigant can handle it, and then, so at the end of the day, when judgment is given, you know that justice is done and manifestly seen to be done. But where you don't even have a space and then time is up, and then you're knocked off on technical grounds because 180 days are exhausted, you go home a sad man, and then we go again, round the circle again. And then, you know, we have very smart politicians who are litigants on the other side. Once they are sworn into office, they frustrate the process. So today you come, maybe you have about 5 witnesses to the field, and the matter has run for, like, let's say a whole month, and 5 witnesses are not exhausted. A month is like 30 days gone, or 31 days as case may be. You continue to the next month, and then the next month. Before you know it, 90 days are gone. You have not proved your case, and the tribunal will trash your case. So what do you have? So I am of the view that whereas it's important that we bring in some innovation into our electoral process, whereas it's important that we bring in things that would attach credibility to the process, we have to be a bit more careful so we don't muddle up the issues too much. If we cannot guarantee security, at the moment the country has a lot of flashpoints to deal with. So you're already stretching the military and the police apparatus, all right? So ask them to monitor election results or elections that are being conducted in different centers in the name of direct primaries. We'll be overreaching the military and the police, all right? We'll be overreaching even ourselves. 2, you don't have the logistics to coordinate these things and then block every insider abuse. It's not possible. 3, You are shutting the doors of democracy when you put everybody on one lane. Democracy is a freedom of choice. So if a political party says we want to do direct primaries, Party A says so, yes, go ahead. Provided the Electoral Act provisions are met. All right? INEC is there to supervise. Good. Party B says no, we can do direct primaries. That's a business they can afford. And then Party C says we can do consensus. Fine. You don't say everybody must be this. Above all, from the judicial angle, the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court, are pronounced severally. When it comes to the internal affairs of a party, it is party's own internal affair. The courts lack jurisdiction to go and intervene. So why would they put the law that would give the courts more work to do? If the party says this is what we want to do for our own party's sake, given our peculiarities, so be it. So be it. So I don't agree with those who disagree with the president saying the president probably is wrong to be told assent and that National Assembly should override him. National Assembly will override him and then we'll see what will happen. I want you to quote me here. At the next election cycles, next 4 years, that law will be revisited and they will take it out again. What has happened so far is that National Assembly members go to Abuja and think out the law to suit their interests per time. And I say this with every sense of responsibility. Go back to the Electoral Act. Go back to it and see what has happened over time. This 2010 amendment that is now being tinkered with came as a result of what President Yar'Adua said at inauguration in 2007. Remember, he spoke at inauguration and said he admitted the election that brought him to power in 2007 was manifestly flawed and advocated for and promised to do electoral reforms. That's why I set up the Justice Mohammed Lawal Owais panel. Now, when they finally passed the Electoral Act Amendment 2010, most of the items that the panel headed by the former Chief Justice of Nigeria recommended were thrown out of the window. They were thrown out. If you can read what the Justice Owais panel recommended, over 80% of them are not in that Electoral Act Amendment 2010 because some politicians are not comfortable with what President Yar'Adua tried to do. If he was alive, probably would have enforced it, but he's no more there. So politicians like to tamper with the process to suit their own interest. So those who are rooting for direct primaries are not rooting because they love Nigerians. No. They have the deep pocket. They can afford to buy everybody that stands on the line and have the majority. Take that away, there's nothing to show. There's nothing new that direct primaries will do for us that direct primaries cannot do. So I think that for me, a fair point to leave it would be to say, allow the parties to determine their strengths and their weaknesses and conduct the process for producing candidates according to what they can carry, provided it is within based on the law. That's all. When the candidate is thrown up to the general public, at that point, that idea of direct primaries now works. Every Nigerian can vote, whether it's your party or not your party. At that point, INEC can handle it. It makes it even easier. But if you see what INEC grapples with at general elections, you know that political parties can handle it when you throw it open.
Oh, okay. So on to the next subject. Still in the context of the National Assembly, there is the police plan, the state police concern that is still in the mix. Let me just get your take on that. Do you think it's something that can work? Do you think it's something the Nigerians need? Because you've pointed out today that every state we have our peculiarities. And while on the one hand you have said that the politicians would do what works for them per time, this concern about state police is out there. Is it something that would favor the people, or is it also something that may be used per time? Because some people also have the concern that state governors, the governors will control the police and other issues like that. But let me just get your take.
Well, in principle, I have nothing against state police, in principle. But I always like to look at the other end of the story. If we want to practice federalism, for God's sake, let's practice federalism. Now, if our federal character says we have 3 years of government, we have the federal government, we have state government, and then have local governments in this country, then let's apply the principle pro rata. If there's a federal police, and then there's state police, then there must be local government police, what they want to call county police in the US. The idea is to provide security, isn't it? Now, take the powers of the governors to control the local government chairman away. Just like the powers for the president has little powers to control governors. Let governors have less powers, control the local government chairman, and they'll have a balance. But if you say no, the governor is at liberty to run his state the way he wants, then the abuse that people are afraid of will happen. All right? Once he has that absolute power to control the states, he can tell the commissioner of police to hound his political opponents, and they obey him, because he's the one that is the commander-in-chief at that level. All right? So if you want to democratize policing or security in this country, drive it down the spectrum. Let local governments also have their own police. And let them have full powers. And then go and change the constitution to take the powers of the governors to control councils away. I remember in this country, on December 5, 1998, when INEC began this fourth arm of the Fourth Republic, to register political parties then, that year's local government election was taken as a criteria for qualification from all the political associations. At the end of the day, PDP, Alliance for Democracy, AD, and then All People's Party, APP, were the ones who were arrested ahead of 1999 elections, remember, because they were able to field candidates based on the results from the local government elections of that December 5, 1998. That's how 3 parties. That election appears to be the cleanest so far in this country. But subsequently, under the 1999 Constitution, there are creations of, there's a creation of what they call state electoral commissions, all right? So those ones are not responsible for conducting local elections in the different states. And of course, all of us know that the governor's party always wins. All the seats. All the seats. If you see anybody flying a flag on another party that's not the governor's party, it's only there to add, to give the process some bit of credibility. It's not a member of that party. It's only flying that flag. So if you watch, if they declare him winner of a councillorship seat, assuming he was declared a winner of a councillorship seat in Ward A, before the tenure is over, you'll find him has gone back to the governor's party. So what was done was just a charade. All right? The governors fund the state electoral commissions, they appoint the commissioners there, and so they control the process from day one to the end. And that's why most governors come to office and the first thing they do is to chase away local government chairmen that were not elected under them, because they want to control the process. All right? So let's not move away from the argument. If we want to have state police in this country, then democratize it enough to have local government autonomy. So council can also have their what they call council police. Now, if a local government chairman controls a part of a state and can guarantee security in his own local government, then he moves to the next local government, security is guaranteed. Multiply it by the entire state. The governor's job is cut out. All right? He has less work to do as well. So if we're able to monitor the grassroots for the local government level and police them very well, and then move on, extrapolate that to the state, and then to the nation that will have security. But they say if you want to move that away from just federal government down to the state, without a trickling down effect of that decentralization to the grassroots, again, you are not solving the problem. So whereas in principle I don't oppose the idea of creating state police, I think I should have the magnanimity to think of the process the way and manner that we're not fooling ourselves. Let those who are the level of authority at that low level, but at the grassroots level, the communities know who is who. A local government chairman can call the meeting of traditional rulers, and in 1 hour they're before him. So thing has happened in so community. We want that guy tracked down now. They have what they call local vigilantes all over the place now, isn't it? There are local vigilantes all over the states, even like River State here. They call them OSPAC, all right? Who controls them? Most times local government councils control them. So that's what I'm saying now. Recruit, if you like, recruit 100 million police. All right? The police needs the communities to have intelligence to track crime, okay? Who did what? So if you bring it down to the level where the local grassroots have a role to play, statutorily, by law, it will make more sense. But hanging at the level of state police alone, and doing not about county police or local police, that you see you're going to get the problem solved.
Okay, very insightful thought right there. Chinyere, over to you.
Thank you, Fakai. Mr. Eli, I have to segue a bit to what we were talking about before now, which was the issue of direct and indirect primaries. Some people have accused the president of being selfish because we saw how direct primaries brought him to the fore in 2019. He's actually a benefit, or rather a benefactor of direct primaries, and now he's going against direct primaries. What's your take on this?
Again, Cherry, thanks for that question. It's totally wrong. Totally wrong for anybody to say the president is against direct primaries. It's not true. The president has said, and I hold that view too, you can't force everybody to do direct primaries in this country. And has given the reasons: security, logistics, and then of course the democratic principle of allowing people the room to do their thing. All parties are not equal. Okay, those who argue about 2019, let me ask a simple question. President Buhari was returned with over 42 million, or there about 30-something million votes. As I followed the process through. Okay, with how many votes was he returned as president in the general election? As the whole country voting, not only APC voting now. The total number of votes declared for him as grants for re-election is not up to that figure. So are we saying that all the APC members who voted for him did come out to vote for him in 2019? Is that what I'm saying? In 2015, we voted via indirect primaries. It happens did not fall. So what's the difference in 2019? The total number of votes ascribed to him as total votes cast for him from direct primaries across the federation is not equal to what is called as candidates of the APC at general election for Atiku Abubakar in 2019. So what are we talking about? So when they say it's a beneficial of direct primaries and now it's against it, it's an argument that looks like you're loading a revolver and shattering your ankles with a shot. You will limp. It doesn't make sense. With respect to it, it doesn't make sense. The president has said, take that clause away. Allow parties to make choices about how they produce their candidates. And it's doable. All those who are grandstanding for direct primaries, I've told the gentleman in the studio here before me that is grandstanding. Politicians do these things when they have an advantage. They're not doing it for the Nigerian people. Let's walk away from that hypocrisy. Those who are clamoring for direct primaries are doing so because they have an advantage. Take the advantage away, they will not want it. All right? And people should stop pretending like they love the Nigerians too much. Otherwise, we'll be forced to say things on set that we should not be saying. People should allow Nigerians go through this process bit by bit. We've had how many cycles of democracy since 1999? We can hold some people account and say, you've been there for this long, come and show us what you have done for the people. Absolutely nothing. It's only when election is coming, they come around to look like they are pro-people. Once elections are over, you can't even reach them on phones. And the Nigerian people should wake up and smell the coffee. These things are not done most times in their interest. They are done to serve narrow, parochial, personal pet interests. So I don't think the president is blamable for saying we should open the field. Mind you, he didn't say take out direct primaries from the Electoral Act. He didn't say so. He said all parties cannot have one mode of selection of the candidates.
Points. He has a dissenting view. He thinks that the constitution is marred with a lot of irregularities. In fact, it has been described as a subterfuge. So he thinks there should be a reform in the constitution and also some short-term, structural amendment in terms of restructuring. So that's what he thinks should be the conversation that we should be driving at this moment as Nigerians, instead of talking about elections and direct and indirect primaries. What do you think about that?
Again, I don't agree with him. I don't agree with him because he's placing the lead on the conversation. See, you know we have a problem with the elites in this country. Everybody has a solution. Everybody pretends has a solution. Seated there, I also have my own solutions. But when we're in the saddle, we tend to forget that more often than not, we fail the people. Sure, we elected the National Assembly in 2019. Now, let me give you an example. Ike Kuremadu was Deputy Senate President for 2 terms, maybe 3 terms. And in that capacity, he heads the Constitutional Review Committee at the National Assembly. Since 19 to 9, he's no more the Deputy Senate President, so he's not heading the committee. That same committee is now headed by Senator Ovia Mogage from Delta State. If you ask me, Eke Kurumadu is PDP, Obiema Agege has moved from Labour Party to APC. If you ask me, what difference do you see in terms of momentum, in terms of constitutional amendments? The constitution cannot be amended quickly because you know why? These politicians like to look the other way. It don't work that way. How come we cannot amend the constitution on certain items year in, year out? Session in, session out. How come we cannot do it? So when Professor Jega says we shouldn't be looking at electoral act amendment now or those items or this and that, we should be looking at constitutional amendments, I beg to disagree. The fact is that we don't hold these people accountable. That's why they keep having this jamboree over us. If we say we want to amend the constitution, what does it take? The process of amendment of the constitution is in the constitution itself. It's not rocket science. If an item is to be amended, it requires two-thirds majority at the assembly level and the two-thirds majority of the state of assembly, 36 of them, to concur. Once the concurrence, it is passed. How come we cannot ever do it? For instance, now we have APC in the majority across the federation, all right? So they can pass what they want in the constitution by having two-thirds of House of Assembly to concur with National Assembly. Why they have a overwhelming majority in both chambers? Why is it not done? Why is it not done? So I don't believe in that argument that he raised. The constitution has some problems, I agree, but you know, there's no special time to handle it. All we need is to have patriotic Nigerians whose duty is not to mount patriotism and do otherwise. Whose duty is not to line up their pockets and let the people suffer. When they go to Abuja, they sit down to work. From day one, you can get the results. Right? But what I've seen so far is people say so much and do less. And then when they get to office there, they do something else. Okay? Otherwise, it's not, I'm giving a perspective. If a Ekweremadu could not do it, and it's okay, the PDP could not do it, what about the APC? Obiema Agege had come to head that same committee. What has happened? These items will roll over again to the next one. If Obiema Agege does not return to the National Assembly, and somebody else is elected again as Deputy Senate President and heads the committee, the same thing will happen again if people don't sit up. So let the citizens wake up and demand actions from these people who go to Abuja to represent us. Hold the House Assembly members responsible. We should also try to do what they call, try to influence what they call the private members bill by sending what they call citizens bill. This thing they call not young to run, that they passed and the president sent it to. The idea was not entirely from government. The idea came from some civil society activists who pushed and pushed and pushed and it went through. So, if we apply the same theory on virtually every front, we'll get it done. If, for instance, we're having a conversation about state police here, and I'm advocating that, look, it does not end with state police. If we want to have the problem of insecurity dealt with in this country, then drive the process all the way down to local government levels. All right? And then enforce in the constitution, make sure that the constitution is, the local governments are freed. They're completely freed, autonomous in every sense of the word. The way the states are autonomous from the federal government, let the local governments be free from state governors. All right? And then we can now have a proper policing system where a local government chairman can fund the police at this level. And now, detecting crime at that level will not be too tough because the local government space is smaller. They understand who is where. The communities know who is in the community, and to catch a thief or another criminal is not rocket science. So, if we agree that some issues in the constitution need to be addressed, I was serious as citizens, we can force the process. Before you know it, a bill is at National Assembly level, it is passed, all right, because there will be pressure from constituents. When they call public hearing, we go there in our numbers and argue and say, this is what we want. They are servants, we elected them, all right? They're supposed to legislate for us, all right? So we don't call them honorable or senator and then allow them to remain in their sky as overlords. If you go down, demand for accountability and say, look, this must be done. And then they come to the National Assembly, from the bill is now sent to the state assemblies for state House of Assembly for concurrence. We go there again and demand that this is what we want. House of Assembly at the state level concur. And then the bill will return to Abuja and then the president will assent. Constitution is amended. No rocket science. But we know this thing, but we never do them. And then we'll now play to the gallery and act like we're asking for something from mass. No. It is doable. So I don't agree with Jega that this debate about electoral act are not necessary now. The constitution has always been there. But what did he say in 2019 about that? In 2020, what did he say? 2021, did he say anything? Now he's talking. it's too late. These guys are going to go into election mode any moment from now. In fact, the PDP have concluded their national convention. They have a new national chairman called Dr. Yosha Yu. APC has planned their own for February 26th to have a national chairman. After that one, the next convention will be to elect candidates for elections. APC timetable also shows that they're going to have a primaries for Ekiti and then Osun State between this February and March. Okay? So, after that, we're going to 2023. So, where's the time to look at constitutional amendments? This one is gone for this assembly, for the 9th assembly. Maybe we look at the 10th.
Okay, so Barrister Eli, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, was in Lagos on Monday to deliver a lecture in Unilag, and I was privileged to be part of that meeting. He talked extensively about direct primaries. Sorry, we have to overflow the issue now, but he spoke about direct primaries. You know, he was passionate about talking about it, which means he's for direct primaries. They have reconvened from recess, and then there are tensions about whether the president's veto might be override by 2/3 majority. Do you have concerns?
Again, you know, with respect to Femi Gbajabiamila, I don't know who are in the audience. I don't know how you guys react to him. I'm not against the primaries per se, but I'm against forcing a law down the throat of Nigerians. Go to our constitution. Our constitution gives people liberties. These are constitutionally guaranteed liberties. If Femi is okay with direct primaries in the APC, what if Labour Party is not comfortable with direct primaries, but they cannot afford it? This is down to affordability. President raised silent issues as grounds for objection. He raised issue of security, raised the issue of funding, raised the issue of credibility of the process. I mentioned here, maybe at the risk of repeating myself, that the president in 2019 came through a direct primaries mode. The total number of votes recorded for President Buhari is close to about 39, between 39 and 41 million. All right? As the votes is called to be elected as candidate for the APC for 2019. Now, at the general elections versus Atiku Abubakar, all right? Is that what it's called? The answer is no. So are you saying that the APC members who did not vote for him that much? So the argument for that primary is neither here nor there with respect. It does not add any value to the process. However, those who want to go by the primary, let them go with that, but it cannot be the electoral act. But once it's an electoral act, it applies to every political party, and that is anti-democracy. Democracy gives us the freedom of choice. So those parties that can afford the primaries can go, provides in the party constitution. Those that cannot afford it can go with indirect primaries, and those who can afford to go with consensus will go. The idea is that the issue of democracy is founded on the freedom of choice. If you cannot make choices, then it's only democracy. Asking everybody to go for direct primaries is dictatorship. And there's no better way to put it. It is dictatorship. If I have a direct line to speak to Femi Gbajabiamila, I'll tell him now, Mr. Speaker, what I'm advocating for is you're being a dictator. Allow parties to choose the modes of primaries that are convenient for them and are realistic and are doable. And that makes it more sense to me. Those who want to do direct primaries is within their rights to go for it. But let's not force it down everybody's throat. We cannot ram things down that way. It's not done in a democracy. People must have the capacity and the freedom to make their own choices. That's what is the beauty of democracy. That's what it's all about. The moment you say everybody must follow one route, must, it becomes mandatory. That's why in the language of the law, when the law says shall, it is mandatory. And you have no other option, you must obey. If the law says may, then it's up to your discretion. You have opportunity to probably say I will do, I will not do. All right? So it's the spirit and letter of the law that I am advocating for. And I stand by those who say, make this is liberal. It must not say every party must do direct primaries. What if they don't have the resources? And then, like we've seen there, in the case of the Buhari case in 2019, they can pad the figures. Would have a clean register as we speak here. Today, some people will register in APC today. Tomorrow, some people, even today, this afternoon, some people might leave. So if you're going to hold a direct primaries by tomorrow morning, how are you sure that what you have is a fair representation of the membership of APC? You go to PDP, the same thing. People are moving from party A to party B per second. So on what basis are you going to say, let's use the party register as grounds for having direct primaries. Because we're not sure at any point in time who has moved where. So the argument is neither here nor there. I wish him well. If he goes through, fine. But we'll see how it pans out. I mentioned there, in 4 years I'll be back again, and you said they are coming back to tinker with it again and say, okay, the primary is not perfect again. Let's allow it open.
Thank you so much, Barrister Ella, for your analysis.
Thank you.
Hi.
Okay, thank you so much, Inyere, for that. Well, we have to go on a quick break. When we come back, on to Nnamdi Kanu's conversation or the discussion about his trial and the new charges against him. Do not go anywhere. This is still Atlantic Blowout right here on Atlantic Television Network.
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring on-spot news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economy, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today. Only on ATN.
Welcome back to Atlantic Blowout right here on Atlantic Television Network. On to our next conversation this morning. Nnamdi Kanu's trial has been moved to Wednesday, which is today, as the federal government files new terrorism charges. Now, the IPOB leader now faces a total of 15 counts of terrorism and treasonable felony, as the federal government has amended its charges against him. This was done 24 hours to the hearing. Nnamdi Kanu, who has been in detention since his alleged abduction from Kenya and repatriation to Nigeria, was represented by his team of lawyers led by Chief Mike Ozoekome, a senior advocate of Nigeria. Now, his team has complained that the federal government failed to promptly serve him the fresh 15 amended charges it brought before the court. And yes, still, this is the conversation. I remember the other day on Blowout, we talking about the sit at home. It kind of seemed like it was something that was going to stretch through the entire week, knowing that IPOB said the sit at home would happen on the 18th, and now this new issue is coming up. Obviously, they are going to be in trial mode. They are going to also be people who are trying to support, and a lot of uncertainties coming from some Southeast states because people don't know the body language to take. But I'll come to our guest this morning on this conversation. New charges against him, 24 hours, and their lawyer has pointed out that this is something that the federal government has done time and time and again. What's your take on these new charges and how they will stick, if they will stick?
Well, with respect to Leonard Silk, Chief Mike Ozoekome, is within his rights to express inconvenience as defense counsel to Nnamdi Kanu. But this is the law. This is not sentiments. the law of Nigeria, and in fact in every adversarial system, allows for the prosecution to amend the charges at any time until date is fixed for judgment. So that's the law, and a bad prosecutor may want to exploit a loophole in the law. Let me give you an example. In 2012 December, an incident happened in Degema and then in Rivers State, and I came in as defense counsel. Police filed charges on the Rivers State's cultism law, anti-cultism law. I had 3 and then 18 suspects to defend, accused persons to defend. It began with the police prosecution. Along the line, the complainants secured the fiat from the Attorney General to bring a private prosecutor, a counsel, who happens to be my classmate and my callmate. And it was amendment after amendment. Up till 2015, we are still within the prosecution pursuing this case. They have not closed the case, so I cannot even enter defense, all right? Because they kept amending the charges. Don't forget, before you proceed on trial, you have done like what they call investigations of what the accused person is accused of have done, right? Good. Now, maybe you have established a prima facie case. You now arraign the suspect in court, read the charge, and then pleas taken. But maybe because of trial, other issues that you may not know might now open up. All right? That's what they call a community of crimes. Whatever happens, this happened there. And then you want to come, and then your job is to make sure you establish that this accused person is guilty. But it's not about sentiments. It's about doing a job and dealing with a fair mind. If this is about political prosecution, it's a matter of time if you peter out. All right? Because if you cannot put something on note and expect to stand. Remember the famous Yusuf vs. McFoy pronouncement by Lord Denning. If there is no evidence to nail Nnamdi Kanu to the allegations that are put forward as charges in courts, they are not sustainable, they collapse with time. Now that's why the judge comes in. You know, along the line, the judge went to exercise his discretion in courts to put some kind of sanity in the system where the judge has smelled some kind of intention to subvert justice or suppress justice, because as we are here, Nnamdi Kanu is a Nigerian citizen entitled to certain rights under the Constitution, even though he's an accused person. So if you bring processes and you bring devices or schemes to buy time to frustrate justice, as a prosecutor, that's good for you. It may not be good for the defense, but it's good for the defense to also understand sometimes that the prosecution is only working on what's available in the law. If the law does not allow for such amendments, they will not continue. It gave back to the issue of laws or lawmaking. Our laws have a lot of lacunas that can be exploited by mischievous prosecutors. I mentioned there in my own experience. That's one of several cases that I've done where the prosecution will never be ready. Right? They know that most times they hurriedly take people to court without doing due diligence in their investigations. All right? So when they go to court, they now find out, look, this charge is not sustainable. We proceed like this, defense counsel will knock it off. Because remember, when the charge is read, they feel witnesses on the other side, and then defense counsel will cross-examine. All right? In course of cross-examination, you're damaging their case already. So what they do is they withdraw and then amend the charge. All right? And bring fresh counts or fresh charges. That's what happens. Just to buy time and frustrate the case. Now, if they are done due diligence, because in our law is strict. The rule of liability is very strict. All right? So it does not say, for instance, that Mr. A committed a crime and now you're going to look for Mr. B to punish. No. The evidence must point directly at Mr. A, that he committed alleged crime. Then the charge is sustainable. Most times what to have here is spontaneous reactions to issues. Yes, Nnamdi Kanu, by his utterances and by his conduct, may have put himself up as an enemy of the state as in Nigerian Republic, all right? And so they want to probably deal with that, okay? That could be the reason for these electoral amendments and all that, all right? So it's left for the counsel representing him to raise his game. and see how he can deal with issues. I remember also that because of the political nature of the matter, Igbo leaders have met the president, probably to look for an out-of-court settlement, all right? All the president had done, if he was convinced, was to ask the Attorney General to enter and nully prosecute, all right, so discontinue trial. But the president said no, the man will have his day in court. He doesn't want to get involved. So again, it depends on the Igbos. If they think that what the Kanu is doing means well for them to explore further channels, I'm sure that if they met the president once and the president gave their answer, if they try to put some further pressure on him, all right, through that back channels and that means, it may change his mind. All right, that way, if they don't enter and nully prosecute, then bringing fresh charges might stop. All right, then we deal with what's before us and then we proceed the case. That should be, if I were in the Zokume's shoes, that's what I would advise my clients, people to do. All right, and then the idea of having to have a sit at home orders is not helping this case either. Let me just digress and address that too. You don't try to amputate people, especially when you have a bad case. Bad case in the sense of what? Nnamdi Kanu had led the revolution, as it were. That revolution had led to loss of lives. And no responsible government will sit down and allow that happen. They make sure they stop it. Along the line, they got him, and then he was taken out on bail. And then they jumped bail. That again would be enough reason not to give me further bail. Right? Whatever they did to get him back, they got him back. So, you don't, for his sake, stop the Igbos from going to school or from going to the markets. You're only hurting your own economy. All right? And people should remember that for those of us who probably were not there, in the war was fought in the old Eastern region, not entire Nigeria. The Western region was going about this business. Northern region was going about this business. Schools were on. It's only the East that schools were not on. And life was crippled. At the end of the day, the Igbos are running from behind to catch up with the rest of the nation because they lost 3 years fighting a war. All right? UNN was not working, but AB Zaria was on. University of Lagos was on, Ibadan was on, Ife was on. All right? So in those 3 years, people are going to school. But the Igbos stopped. So when they say people should not go to market, should not go to school, because you want to force a federal government to respond to you on the terms you want for Nnamdi Kanu, was agitating for you. You are probably also, putting the cart before the horse. It's good to agitate, we agree, but what you're trying to enforce all affects you. So you're cutting your nose to spite your face. If you say people should not go to markets, people should not come out, you're not telling Yoruba people to do what they're doing, or Hausa people to do, not to do what they're doing, or Fulani people, or Ijaw people, or other people. You're the one hurting yourself. So they need to tinker with their approaches, right? The strategy for getting these things done. 2, probably next, they have to look at the international community angle. Who are they talking to speak to the Nigerian government? Because every country has its own sovereignty. Now, under the doctrine of sovereignty of nations, it's a limit to what another country can do to Nigeria. But they can persuade on social grounds, provided you two, while they're doing that, you stem down on your own agitations. All right? When you make the area look more volatile by forcing people to stay at home, first and foremost, those people are Nigerians. That's what the Constitution says. And the Nigerian government in Abuja want to protect them. So when you fight that movement, you hurt the economy of those people and the economy of the nation. All right? But by and large, it's a matter that needs to be approached with element of wisdom and caution on both sides. Otherwise, the question of amending the charges will continue, and the trial will be prolonged, and then everything and everybody is looking to be resolved in no time will not be resolved. So we'll have to look for how to handle the courtroom actions, right, in terms of case management, and then outside the courtroom, apply diplomacy to see whether I can get a meeting point where some things can happen. But while Kanu is in prison, there are some people who are still grandstanding too. And I don't see how that can solve the problem. So I would advise strongly that the lawyer representing Kanu should explore back-end channels both ways, in courts and outside courts, and lead the process. And then maybe there could be a way out. Otherwise, it is within the law to amend charges. That's a new thing in our legal practice. Even before the Administration of Criminal Justice Act was passed, that was what it was. Now, under this act makes room for expedition of justice, as in expedition of trials, right? But again, you know, as Nigeria is, something must happen. Someone will look for a loophole somewhere to apply. That's what's going on. So if we're able to take the sentiments, emotions out of it and address the issue frontally with wisdom, I'm sure we can find a way out.
Okay, sure we can find a way out as you've pointed it, but this concern is one that we've also spoken about on the blowout right here. Nomenclature, what is in a name? When someone is said to now have charges or connected to terrorism, or saying that terrorism charges, he's labeled that way. And of course, his lawyers have also said he has been kept in solitary confinement, and even the judge ordered that he should have, you know, a new outfit, or he should change what he wears to court. It somehow suggests that he's been treated a certain way because he's been labeled a certain way. But I was going to ask you, do you think that the federal government has a case when it comes to charges like terrorism? Is he really going to pass as a terrorist? From your own professional opinion.
Well, you know, if you ask me if I think they have a case, I don't have a case file for me, so I don't know the ingredients of offense that they've seen. If I've seen the case file for me, I can read and I can say, okay, based on this ingredient of offense, but every offense has ingredients to prove. For instance, if we say the charge is stealing, 3 basic elements are allowed in law. 1, the property alleged to have been stolen must belong to somebody. It must be property of someone. 2, the item alleged to have been stolen is capable of being moved, right? And then 3, the property has been moved, all right? So once you're able to prove these 3 elements, you prove the offense of stealing, all right? So for even terrorism, every crime has ingredients. So if I had the case for me, I can say, okay, based on what I've read there, they've established a case against him. But whatever the charge is, our constitution presumes that Nnamdi Kanu is innocent until the contrary is proved. And the burden of proving that he's not innocent is not on him, the accused person. Whether I call it terrorism or call it whatever, it doesn't make sense. It does not change the issue. All right? What is the issue that constitution seems him as innocent? The burden of proof that he's a terrorist is on those who are alleging. And this is the people who are on the side of the prosecution, all right? So if they are unable to prove their case, it's not in the name you call a crime that the court is interested in. The court is interested in you proving the ingredients of that offense in that name. Once you don't have the ability to prove that this offense as alleged was being committed by Mr. Nnamdi Kanu, he will walk away a free man. It's not about changing the name. Yes, so much is there in the name, but terrorism, yes, it's a serious offense. It's a high crime, punishable by strenuous, extremely deleterious circumstances. All right? But it doesn't end there. The onus of the prosecution to prove their case before Nnamdi Kanu can go in for it. If they fail to prove their case, I'm afraid it's not about the name. It's not about how many times you amend the charges. If you're unable to prove your case, the case will collapse.
Okay, Chinyere, over to you. Chinyere, we can't hear you. Chinyere, we can't hear you. Are you there? All right, Chinyere, if you can hear me, we can't hear you. There's a bit of a sound challenge over there, but we're waiting to get back to you on this conversation. Just in case you just checked in. Are you there now?
Hey, Mr.
Chinyere, yes, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
So, Martha Ella, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
The trial of Nnamdi Kanu has been in the eye of the storm for a while now. His people has described his abduction from Kenya as a violation of international law and basic principles of the rule of law. Some people have also described the president's position as a travesty of justice, looking at, citing the trajectory of what you said. You said he led a revolution that has, brought about loss of lives. So some section of Nigerians are saying, we have seen the Boko Haram that has destroyed lives and properties in the northeast, northwest, and whatnot. And the Nigerian government has not gone for them, even though they know some of these leaders. I mean, leaders of these, these groups, the Boko Haram, the ISWAP, and even the bandits. The federal government hasn't gone for them. So why are they going for Nnamdi Kanu, who is supposedly, for want of a better word, peaceful? So as I said, the president's position on this issue has been seen as injustice. Do you share in that bias?
I don't share the bias. And I'm sorry to disappoint you. The president is the commander-in-chief, all right? He's not the Chief Justice of Nigeria. He's not. He heads the executive arm of government, agree, where the position is coming from. He appointed the Attorney General of the Federation that heads the position of Nnamdi Kanu. To that extent, you can say, okay, he's involved. But you see, he has a duty to protect a nation. That's his foremost duty. Now, when you compare Nnamdi Kanu's case to Boko Haram, ISWAP, and other terrorist groups, you mix things up. Nnamdi Kanu was leading a team. Before him, it was Ralph Warazirike was leading a MASOB, all right? Movement for the Actualization of Sovereignty of Biafra, if I'm right. Now, he came with the indigenous people of Biafra. Now, if you look at the methods of Ralph Warazirike and methods of Nnamdi Kanu, they're not the same, even though they're almost pursuing the same objective. But if you go to the gamut of international law, these things are like that. If you go to Kenya, in those days, this is what they call the Mau Mau movement. The Mau Mau movement was like an armed struggle when they were seeking for independence from the British. You go to South Africa, they had the ANC leading the major anti-apartheid struggle. Now, at some point when speaking English was not working, by the likes of Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, Oliver Tambo, who, even as lawyers who were in one law firm, led the team. They had other guys like Steve Biko, Prisani, Governor Mbeki, who is the father of Thabo Mbeki. All of them were involved in the struggle. But they had a youth wing called the Mkoto Wesizwe, translated to mean the spear of the nation. All right? They were like the youth wing of the ANC, or African National Congress. And they went underground, most times to do dangerous things. The South African government set up what they call the Terrorism Act to deal with them. Right? So even when they arrested Mandela and put him on trial, and then had to keep him out 27 years in prison, all of those charges were involved. But at the end of the day, because they declared a political prisoner, because the matter was escalated to the point where the international community was now looking at the issues. All right? And then gradually, clemency came, and then Frederick Clark released him, and then came out, and then became president, and then had all of those TRC set up, headed by the late man who just died now, Bishop Desmond Tutu, all right, and on and on and on and on. You can go to other parts of the world, these things have happened, all right? Even now, China is having problems allowing Taiwan be a republic on its own, all right? That man they call the Dalai Lama, who is everywhere, is there, but nobody's approach is peaceful as well. So it's not facing trial anywhere. So, but back to Nnamdi Kanu and Boko Haram. Boko Haram doesn't have defined membership, we don't even know them. There is spurious amorphous group, which is called a name. Some people are express sentiment that look like, okay, this man knows them, all right? But how do you hold him to account? How do you bring him to courts? Our law is strict when it comes to the issue of vicarious liability, especially on the criminal matters. You don't hold Mr. A accountable for what Mr. B did because you think they are friends or they are brothers. You can't prove it. The law must point to the person who committed the act, all right, before you can convict. So, ISWAP, same thing. These are subterranean operations. You can't say this is their office, this is their headquarters, this is where they operate from. Even when they put up videos, you find out they cover their faces. You can't, they hood their faces like proper terrorists. So how do you know where they are? And then, if you don't have intelligence, if the locals who know where they are don't tell you where they are, you won't know. So you keep groping in the dark. So until you come to a point where this about whatever it is, this same president that some people are alleging is doing injustice to Nnamdi Kanu, I declare those people terrorists as well. It took him time to do so, but finally he has done it. Okay? So now going forward, whether they are themselves or whatever they call them, bandits, whatever, they are terrorists. And no, when the military comes to them, in their own case, it's not even about going to them and looking for them for arrest and trial. They go for them and they wipe them if they see them, which is more cruel. Would they have wanted a situation where they got Nnamdi Kanu and shot him dead in the name of executing him because he's leading a revolution? I would take the other option. Presenting in court is more civilized. The trial can be tinkered with. It happens elsewhere too, like I mentioned in the Mandela case. But finally, if the case is built on nothing, he has no evidence to convict him, you walk away free man. All right? So heroes welcome by his people. But if you say that is wrong, I don't know how else. I've told your colleague here what probably, if I was counsel to Nnamdi Kanu, what I'll do. We explore back channels, whether in court or other courts. There must be a way out of this, all right? But while they're doing that, you don't hurt yourself further by enforcing certain stay-at-home orders, disrupt the economy, disrupt your people. Does not make more sense. Does not help Nnamdi Kanu's case, all right? But by and large, compared to the case of this Boko Haram people, IPOB is a concerned organization. Everybody knows where IPOB is and what they want as demands. They've expressed it, the public people know, and they have a leadership. Who would you say the leader of Boko Haram in Nigeria, for instance? We don't know him. Why does he pray from? All he hears is that they've shot somewhere, they've abducted somebody somewhere, and then the police is on the hunt. The military is on the hunt. That's all they hear. The next thing you hear, the military say they have neutralized them somewhere. They see some body somewhere, and then now then some people have abducted them in the list. Okay? So those are two different things. When it comes to conventional warfare, the military will shoot at an enemy they see. But when it's asymmetrical warfare, the enemy is on the ground, you don't see him. All right? It's a bit tough dealing with that. So let's explore. I want to appeal to the Igbo nation, particularly the Ohanese in Igbo, which met the president recently, and then he said, said he will face his trial in court. They can go back and explore more channels. I know that if you speak to a man one day, and he does not give you what you want, you go and speak again another day, another day, you don't know. One day he will give in, all right? So explore that option. So that the president probably can now see the reason why Nnamdi Kanu might be asked to go home and see no more, all right? By the Attorney General entering Nolly. But don't forget, we must be fair to the president if we want to criticize this issue. Let's look at the balance. Nnamdi Kanu was already signed on trial when he jumped bail. Under Nigerian law, that's an offense that's so serious. If you're signing trial and you jump bail, that means that prima facie is showing that you're guilty. And that's why you run away. If you're caught again, nobody will talk about bail again for you because you have breached the law of the land. All right? Now, ordinarily too, if the laws apply strictly, the man that's too shorty for him on that bail, Senator Kremadu will be behind bars. Senator Abaribe, all right? Abaribe will be behind bars because he was a shorty of that bail. But Abaribe was not arrested. That tells you the government has a human face. Abaribe goes on the floor and assembly criticizes the government. Nobody reminds him that, look, my friend, you're a shorty of somebody that jumped bail, of a fugitive of the law. So let's be a bit careful how we accuse or raise allegations against the president that maybe he's biased. No, I don't think so. The fact is that he has been gotten back to the country. And this is not the first time. Maybe Chere, maybe you don't know. In 1984, when President Buhari was General Buhari and was head of state, after his government overthrew the Shagari presidential regime in 1983, December 31, the Minister of Transportation was from the north. His name is Umaru Diko. He was in London. An attempt was made to extradite him from London. In fact, they got him up to Heathrow Airport before the British police trapped the effort. It was already in a crate to be shipped to Nigeria for trial. All that was left was to put him in the plane as a cargo. Whether he would have survived the flight to Nigeria is what I don't know. But that attempt was made. So it's not today that the Buhari system will go all out for somebody. Okay? So If you could do that to his somebody from your north, you could do that to anybody anywhere. Bottom line is that Nnamdi Kanu is back on trial. The prosecution is doing its bit, even though we can see some points that we're not comfortable with. So I think that to deal with those discomforts, can explore, can move away from the technicalities of the law. All right, the law is very strict and technical. Okay, you can move away from there and then talk to other people who are by the corner who can prevail on the president's conscience to temper justice with mercy, and then there could be a null prosecution entered by the Attorney General, and then we'll move on. On certain terms and conditions that Nnamdi Kanu should be willing to obey. All right, because once you have worked against the law, you cannot walk away a free man without some bruises or some kind of conditions. Once you're able to satisfy the conditions, I'm sure you have his freedom.
Okay, Barrister Eli, thank you so much for coming on the program. Unfortunately, I wasn't born in 1984, so I don't have all the data about, the man you just mentioned now, DQ also. Thank you so much for coming on the program. We have seen the British High Commission promise to give Nnamdi Kanu to provide some consular assistance. I don't know what that means. Let's hope that, there's some headway and then he gets out of this quagmire at the end of the day. Thank you so much, Barrister Eli, for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Do have a great day ahead. Back to you, Fakai, in Port Harcourt.
Thank you so much, Barrister Subwe Eli, for joining us today on The Blowout. Very insightful breakdowns of details. And we hope to have you again on the show. All right, that's the most we can take right here on Atlantic Blowout. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for joining us. I am Niabari Fakai. You can follow us on our social media handles. Facebook and YouTube is at Atlantic Television Network, and on Instagram is at Atlantic TV Network. Do remember that peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Have a blessed day.